Who is the worst person you have been forced to work or hang out with? I work with a girl who is a pathological liar and lazy as heck. She tells everyone she's going to school to be a doctor, but she can't make it past one task without walking away and letting someone else finish it. She pretends to be in honors classes that I know don't exist at my local university. She spouts BS opinions and tries to pass them off as facts. Talking to her for more than 2 minutes is enough to drive you crazy. We are banquet servers. Everyone splits tips. Everyone does every job, like setup for the event, serving food, making drinks, bussing tables, polishing glasses and silverware, and breaking the event down after. One night, after everyone had gotten a break and chance to eat leftover buffet food, we were all told to break down a 250-person wedding that was trickling out. We have to carry trays in front of members and guests at all times. This girl, we'll call her Amy, does everything she can to not work but appear busy. At least once a shift everyone is asking, "Where's Amy?" You've seen Amy L. She's hiding in the women's locker room on her phone. Went to take linens back but is sitting in the linen closet on her phone for a half hour. Any rate, she gets told to do something, grabs a tray and walks off. I decide to follow her. The way our club is set up, it is a giant circle. I follow her from the kitchen, through the banquet hall, to the bar, through the service station, and back to the kitchen twice. I cut her off on the third loop to ask her where she's going and she says she's doing something important for our boss. Since I knew better, I went to go tell him my observations. He handled her like a pro, told me to keep following her, told another girl to follow me and let her know why, then another and another. The look of understanding that dawned on Amy's face when she realized she had all 9 servers following her for 10 minutes while she did nothing was priceless. Your boss is amazing. That is some on-the-spot creative thinking. When I worked at Wendy's as a teenager, I had a horrible manager that would throw crap, berate everyone, and was just an all-around butt. I ran into him again at a 12-step meeting years later and found out he had just quit drinking when I was working with him. That explained a lot. That's some adult crap right there. He did you wrong, that's for sure. But even though he was definitely in the wrong, you never know what someone's going through. At work, a narcissist boss who takes all the credit for our successes and none of the blame for our failures. She rules by fear 1 minute and wants to be your best friend the next. She's the worst. I've worked for bosses like this. Pernicious is like the good silverware. I only break it out for special occasions. But these bosses are pernicious, that is. Their presence gradually makes everything worse as heck. I worked with a woman in her 40s that thought she was 16. She dressed like that, behaved like that and would set people up to try and show the boss she was the best worker, such as delete files from another's computers, so only her would have it in case the boss asked. Pick up the phone and say that X person wasn't there at the moment, when he actually was, etc. Good thing is that truth came around at last and she got fired, but it was hard working with her for so long. Sounds like a retarded plan. Everyone's files mysteriously get deleted but hers. I used to work with a girl who seemed kind of shallow and not particularly bright, but this was the restaurant industry, so not unexpected. She was friendly enough so we would chat here and there. One day, she told me that she was going to have to break things off with a guy she'd been seeing. Sorry to hear that. I told her. What went wrong? He doesn't buy me presents anymore, she began, as I immediately started trying to think of ways to end this conversation and never speak to this woman again. She went on to explain in far too much detail, outlining stuff he had bought her previously in the kind of perfume she wanted him to buy for her. I don't know why she thought this was relevant. I'm a straight female and not looking to pick up shallow chicks or take up smelling like a whorehouse anytime soon. Anyway, at this point I'm only making polite replies as this girl is a hostess and I don't want to alienate her completely and thereby get accidentally skipped in seating rotation later. But somehow these polite replies managed to elicit the information that she felt like this guy wasn't paying enough attention to her because he was too distracted by his sister dying of cancer. My current boss. I manage a physician's office and she is insufferable. Some points. We have 3 physicians. She's one of them. Both of the other 2 are under contract, but both are looking to leave. One already has a new contract lined up. If you're unfamiliar with the healthcare world, it's highly unusual for doctors to jump jobs after a year or two. The turnover here is incredible. No one stays for more than a year, aside from one employee who sits quietly in her corner, does exactly what is expected of her and no more, just to get herself through school. Looking back through photos of staff parties, birthdays, etc., you never see the same people twice. Doing diligence for a contracting company that wanted to work with us turned up about $400K in missing revenue per year, money I believe she has embezzled for herself. The company is coming up on its 10-year anniversary. When I was brought on I was informed that in those 10 years there have been 3 other managers. One stole, one retired, one screwed up the billing. Turns out the truth. Not sure why she'd lie about it since being the manager all personnel files, past and present, are in my office, is they have had 11 managers in less than 10 years. She guilts you if you don't work overtime, but doesn't pay you for it. She is horrifically inconsistent. I cannot set standards, policies, and procedures in this office because she treats nearly everything on a case-by-case basis. Every attempt I've made to do so is shot down. She is a pathological liar. Will tell a different story to every single person involved in order to get them on her side. When it looks like she's going to actually be to blame for something, she'll say she's stressed and start to cry. Working here has taken an extreme toll on my life, my mental health, and my well-being. I am actively looking for another position. Until then I just have to weather the hurricane that is this woman. Note, if anyone is in DFW and hiring a manager jack of all trades, feel free to PM me. She guilts you if you don't work overtime, but doesn't pay you for it. So it's illegal. If you work overtime, she's required, by law, to pay it, period. Call the local doll office and let them know about this. Get her audited. In elementary school I reluctantly agreed to a playdate with a kid named Brandon. Brandon's dad was a washed up rock star, but was still living like he was in his prime. Long hair, leather pants, that sort of thing. I think that might have been the reason for Brandon's oddness. So I ride the bus home with Brandon that day. We get to his house and head straight up to his playroom. He puts in some single player Lord of the Rings game, and I watch him play for about 2 hours. Every once in a while I interject and ask him if we could play something else or if I could have a turn, but he declines. Finally we get a chance to go outside. I notice a treehouse so I suggest we climb up into it. He says it's infested with bees, but I can try to get the beehive out if I want to. Again, I decline and figure we should move on to something else. Brandon tells me he has go-karts. Perfect, except he just has one. He says we can play a game called drive-through. I stand next to the track while he drives the go-kart around for several laps. Eventually he stops by me and then orders some sticks and leaves for a meal. He makes me eat them. This was perfect. I laughed so hard before you even said drive-through. I knew it was coming. I just imagined this sad butt kid on the side of a dirt road listening to the engine blasting and imagining himself in the driver's seat going over some sweet jumps. Thank you for your pain. It sustains me. My old housemate. It was only a few months in before he got really creepy. Highlights include slapping me hard across the face and butt while high on ketamine, telling someone he was going to wait until I broke up with a boyfriend so I would be emotionally vulnerable and fall into his arms, and telling me he'd only have gone too far with a joke when he's torn through my cervix. He'd then brag about how much of a feminist he was and what an awful person I was because I wasn't a vegetarian. Highlights include slapping me hard across the face and butt while high on ketamine. In what order? If it was simultaneously, then I'm impressed. Had a coworker for about a year and a half that panicked in the stupidest ways under pressure. Once, a man who was working with our office to get help with an immigration issue threatened to shoot and kill the caseworker he was talking to and indicated he had a gun. The caseworker calmly left, found Panic Lady, and asked her to call the police before returning to talk with the man and trying to defuse the situation. Instead, Panic Lady starts calling all the other officers to freak out and tell them what was happening, all the while ignoring the hold up emergency switch under her desk and not calling the police. When she called my office, we told her to hang up and call the cops immediately. It took her a few minutes before she finally did, and the cops showed up in about a minute flat. Sure enough, The guy had a gun. Luckily no one was killed by her stupidity and not calling the cops right away. She did this with smaller things too, so in a sad way it was no surprise this happened. She made inconsequential things a real problem by getting nervous and failing to do something like make a call or send an email. Please tell me she got fired immediately. She almost got people killed. I have a friend of a friend who complains about no one hanging out with him, and so the mutual friend feels bad, invites him along to places. He appears to think that when he is in a group, he needs to impress everyone, so he tried to adjust to the group by insulting everyone. He thinks he's being playful, but he's really just obnoxious. My friend gets a kick out of it because he's known the guy longer, or something. Pity friends are always the worst kind of people. You feel bad that they don't have any friends, but whenever you see them you remember why they don't have any friends. Had a classmate in high school who lied, cheated and was generally dishonest at every opportunity. Whenever there were group assignments to be done he cheated and plagiarized stuff, often straight from Wikipedia, failing the whole group. It didn't matter that he was pretty much always caught and given the verbal slapping of a lifetime from several teachers. He just kept cheating and being a lying butthole throughout all of high school, using all means available to put himself in front of others, usually in clumsy ways that would get him caught. Not to mention he was one of the dumbest, or rather most absent-minded, people I've known, doing things like buying an empty Xbox 360 carton from eBay at the full price of the console, despite it being clearly labeled as an empty box at several places in the description, and asking the teachers questions like how can there be a risk of overpopulation when the land is growing, and many others at an equal level of intelligence. After high school he started playing poker, making shitloads of money, traveling the world and becoming more successful than anyone I know, getting himself a massive apartment and a hot girlfriend, and later bullshitting himself into a well-paying job despite having crappy grades from high school and no college education. It really boggles my mind. I used to work at a movie theater and had the displeasure of working with the stupidest, rudest, most lacking in redeeming qualities. Her name is Brianna and I'm not worried about her seeing this because she probably can't read. Some examples of her stupidity. When she was 19 and I was 23 she insisted I was 5 years older and then used a calculator to check her math. She asked if I was Mexican because I look Mexican even though I'm very pale with blonde hair and green eyes. She thought that literally all mythical creatures are real because how else would we know about them? Some examples of her bitchiness: she used to steal my popcorn scoop from the concession stand so I couldn't serve customers, which is also terrible business sense. I found sunglasses in a theater that I wanted to keep and she snatched them out of my hand, put them on her face and said, "What are you gonna do?" To which I reminded her that we're adults, so I was gonna go on with my day rather than fight her, especially at work. She always greeted me "Hey ugly," but she would say it in this sing-songy way that pretty girls think is cute, but made me want to punch her till her face looked different. My favorite Brianna story happened after I quit. My boyfriend at the time worked there and one day she found out we were dating. She went on the longest rampage of "You're dating her? OMG, why?" That's like if I were dating a homeless person and everyone would be like, why are you dating a homeless person?" He didn't take that well and slammed a fist on the counter, telling her not to talk about me that way. She ran to the back office crying, trying to get him in trouble, but when the manager talked to the staff and realized how it started she got suspended. TLDR. Frick Brianna. I had to work with a technically no, because, guy, you know, the guy who also has some balls thing to say and is a know-it-all. Frick that guy to infinity. I'm a patient person and get along with everyone, but I considered punching him in the face multiple times. There was a period when my friends decided to be accepting, really accepting. Specifically, they decided to be accepting of a neo-Nazi. This dude was unbelievable. A friend met him in an orgy, then started dating him. She was 17. He was 38. He made his living selling coke and, oh, right, he firmly believed that Hitler had the right idea. When I complained, I was accused of being closed-minded and unaccepting. Sort of like, I thought, how Nazis were of the Jews. Eventually, one of his friends got really high and stole my friend's little sister's Christian rock album collection. I decided I was done with hanging out with this guy and his friends. I told my friends I couldn't hang out with a guy with a swastika tattoo anymore and that if they really wanted to get in with that crowd, they were going to have to do it without me. They went with him. TLDR, I am less likable than Nazis. You can support Hitler, but you can't not take my Creed albums. My good friend got a divorce from a seemingly perfect marriage. Him and his wife were living with her parents, and I had been to their house a few times and thought everyone was so happy, besides slight difficulties with the two of them getting steady work, which is why they lived with her parents. He arrives at our, myself and flatmates, doorstep one night and says that his ex's parents had kicked him out because he couldn't provide for her. We found this shocking as they seemed so nice. He had barely enough time to collect his things, and to make matters worse, on his way to our home, he fell asleep on a bus and had his phone and laptop stolen. We all felt so bad for him we told him he could stay at ours for as long as he needed, and we all ignored his ex with anger. One day, she breaks through to my flatmate and begs him to meet. Turns out, the real reason he had been kicked out was because he had stolen an accumulative £10k off her mother's credit card, had stolen and pawned nearly 100 family heirlooms, amounting to £50k, including an antique diamond ring worth over £20k. He had fabricated a job for himself, and for his wife. He had her employed doing at-home design work, where she sent her designs to her PO address and received payment into her account by stolen funds from her family. The laptop and phone that were stolen from him were also pawned, and he used it as a sob story to gain sympathy. When we found this out, we had to think of the best way to get him out without robbing our entire home blind. So we rushed home from work, checked all our things. A few randoms were missing, including 2 tablets. Got ready to confront him, but he didn't come home that night. We got a call from him saying he tried to jump in front of a bus and end his life, but was saved by a bystander. His wife went to see him and was told he had actually checked himself into a inpatient psychiatry. We never saw or heard from him again. We had a next door neighbor that was absolutely bizarre, but we carpooled and therefore forced to interact. One day my parents had the bright idea of trying to kickstart a friendship between the two of us. So he was invited along to a Mariners baseball game with my dad and I. Let's just say he didn't share the same love or respect for the game that we had. Before the first pitch he started this weird wailing screaming, then crawled across people in the stands like he was scaling some type of unfamiliar terrain. My dad did his best to corral him, but didn't want to be too physical since, you know, it wasn't his kid and we were in public. After an inning or two of pure embarrassment, he began sucking on my dad's forearm, basically using it as his own pacifier French kiss makeout kick. This was unfortunately the lesser of 2 evils, and because it kept this nightmare in place my dad just let it happen. For the next 30 minutes I watched as this kid turned his very hairy forearms into something resembling a Doppler weather pattern of a hurricane. Some massive swirls, some smaller ones. I really believe that he got further with my dad's arm that day that he has with a girl, or guy, in the 18 years since the event. We left in the 3rd. There was this one guy in my dorm in university who was obsessed with Smash Brothers. No, he didn't just like it, or really like it, he was obsessed. Problem was, he didn't have anyone to play with as he was pretty socially inept. You could tell he never bathed as he smelled faintly like cheese all the time, and he talked in annoyed grunts. Well, at that time I tried to be friendly to anyone I met. I met this guy in the hall one day and struck up a conversation. He invited me to play Smash Brothers in his room. I thought, why not? I like that game. So we go up to his room and there is trash everywhere. I felt seriously terrible for his roommate. Anyway, we play the game for an hour or so, and job done. Or so I thought. From that day on, every weekend Saturday and Sunday, at 7 AM I would hear a knock on my door. A knock that wouldn't stop until I answered the door. It was always him. I always gave him the same answer. No, I can't play. I have to sleep. But every weekend, until the end of that year when I moved out of dorms, he would wake me up without fail. Even though I never took him up on his offer. The guy just couldn't pick up on social cues. AWW, that's sad. Oh, I have an absolute gem of a woman, Lucy. I'm going to apologize in advance because there's a rant coming. Here's some highlights. A colleague's wife had a miscarriage after 3 years of trying. Very sad for all involved, and naturally we all understood when he took some time off to be with his wife. Lucy couldn't get a day off she wanted, pitched an absolute fit and screamed it's only a freaking bit of blood. It wasn't even a baby. He's just been a C cause he knew I wanted the weekend off. I was out sick for a number of weeks after I was diagnosed with MS after spending 2 weeks in hospital. At this time I was a carer for my grandfather, so still had to ferry him around as he's in a wheelchair. She saw me in the car with him, told my manager I was a fake C who has nothing wrong with her if she can drive, and I got a phone call and summoned to come in for a talk. Apparently I'm that good at lying that I can fake an MRI and protein and CSF. A compulsive liar who hears whatever random, obscure story you tell but tries to one-up you. So far she has a Down syndrome niece, a doctor nephew, a number of dead infant relatives including her own miscarried children, and has had her house shot at by her neighbors. I work with kids a lot with 2 different organizations. I was telling a story about a child who had behavioral problems, and, of course, she has one better. When her son was 3, a child bit him. So what would any rational adult do? Why, you'd proceed to bite the offending child, obviously. I don't believe she did this for a second, but I absolutely lost my crap at her. She had a German shepherd that wouldn't stop crapping out her back garden. She had the dog for 4 years, reached her breaking point with the bastard and got her son to dump it in a field miles away. We didn't accidentally find this out. She told us freely. She is honestly the worst human being I have had the misfortune to know. She is a complete piece of crap who belittles everyone. Carries on like she is the world's greatest mother despite having 2 kids, one of whom is wanted by the police in Ireland and has been hiding out in the UK for 6 years. And the other who is so freaking simple-minded he can't wipe his own ass. I hate you, Lucy. I worked at Target in college and had all kinds of problems with them scheduling me outside of my approved availability. I told the HR woman several times that I am not going to miss classes because they cannot keep my available hours straight, and she always said it won't happen again. After the 3rd time in as many weeks that I skipped a scheduled shift because of this, I got a call from the backroom manager up to the break room while I was on break, and he ripped into me for it, and I explained to him that he personally signed my availability sheet at the beginning of that semester and that I would not miss school for their mistake. He replied, "You need to get your priorities straight," to which I replied, "School is my priority," and hung up the phone. The next morning I showed up for my shift at 4 AM and left at about 4:10. They called me into a little office with a kid they were grooming to be a manager, who was younger than I was, and he told me that I was being fired for no call no show on 3 different occasions. He was so nervous he was shaking. I said something about how the cowards can't even look me in the eye and do it themselves, and then I assured him he did a fine job firing me and patted him on the shoulder and left. A few years after graduating and getting a job as a firmware engineer, I saw my old manager again in Target, in uniform, and I said, "Still here, huh? Well, at least you've got your priorities straight." Living well with a side order of mockery. Lovely. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.